Interesting.
Mm.
What if where you intensely paying attention to the game, and once you do it, you click it, and fall asleep right after? You just
We'll give everyone a minute to log on. I think people are still logging on. Maybe we'll give everyone just one more minute because people are still logging on like mad, so. Carmen or Barb, do you guys want to say anything before we start?
I don't have anything. Herb, nice to see you. Thank
All right, fantastic.
I don't
Barb,
have anything in
President?
particular to say other than welcome everyone, and I'm really glad we're having this discussion. Very important information.
Thanks, Carmen. And so great to see some faces and many pictures actually here, and I guess names. Peter and I would like to welcome you to the update on the focus practice designation for adult complex thyroid and parathyroid surgery. And what we thought we'd do today is I have 13 slides to share, which are slides that have been prepared jointly between representatives of the American Board of Surgery and the American Board of Head and Neck Surgery, otolaryngology head and neck surgery. And they are sharing the same slide deck with their constituency, just to update everyone on what's been going on behind this. And then we have plenty of time, I think, for us to take questions. If you have, in addition to, of course, Peter and I, we have, I think, other people who have been involved in the process who can also provide some context. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And everyone's seeing the slides okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And Peter, feel free to chime in at any time, of course. All right. So we thought we'd start by just going over what a focus practice designation is, just because I think that not everyone understands what one is. And quite honestly, I had no idea before what one was until I started to be involved with the board. But just to sort of walk everyone back, as you all know, when you complete an ACGME accredited residency, you then take your boards, in our case from the American Board of Surgery, and you become, you get a primary board certification from the American Board of Surgery as a general surgeon. And other training pathways beyond your primary certification can include, if you complete an ACGME accredited fellowship, you can then get a subspecialty certification. An example of this would be in complex general surgical oncology. Now, with a focus practice designation, it is something beyond the primary certification that is additional expertise in a particular area of the primary specialty that develops throughout one's career with or without additional training, such a fellowship. So when you look at someone who wants to pursue a focus practice designation, in this case, an adult complex thyroid and parathyroid surgery, you can either have a primary certification.
You gotta stop crying so much for no reason.
A primary certification as from the ABS and general surgeon, or subspecialty within. You could have a surgical oncology sub-certification and also be eligible for a focus practice designation. As shown here. So just to go over what the American Board of Medical Specialty, or ABMS, requirements are for a sub-certification or a focus practice designation. For a sub-certification, that certification, the whole process needs to be approved by the ABMS. You need to have a primary certification. You need to do an ACGM accredited fellowship. In the example, I use surgical oncology. There needs to be an examination. But once that examination occurs, there's not necessarily a need to maintain the primary certification. That you don't need to remain board certified by your primary initial board. And then what gets displayed is you have a sub-certification in that specialty. How a focus practice designation is different is that the whole process requires the American Board of Medical Specialty Approval, which ours has. You do need to be primary certified in general surgery, as within our case. You do not need to do a fellowship. There will be an examination, and we'll get to that later. But you do need to maintain your primary certification in order to maintain your focus practice designation. That is, you have to keep your primary certification from the American Board of Surgery and General Surgery. And then what is publicly displayed is that your certification is still in general surgery, but you have a designation in endocrine, complex thyroid parathyroid surgery. So in order to do this focus practice designation, there was a work group established in 2019 with representation from the American Board of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery. And those people are listed on the left-hand side, and where they put together representation from not only their primary board, but the American Head and Neck Society and the American Academy of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery. And then what we did on our side for the representation is we created representation from people serving on the American Board of Surgery. Peter and I were serving at that time, along with the head of the board, Joe Beiske, and then 3 AAES members were selected to serve in this working group. James Lee, who was secretary at the time, Kepal Patel, who was and still is the recorder, and Tracy Wang, who was the treasurer at the time. So there was an inaugural meeting of this group in August 22, 2019, to start the process of drafting what the focus practice designation would look like, the requirements. And then after doing that, there was a period of public comment, which I think many of our members commented on the focus practice designation. And then after the comment, it was revised to all those comments, and then it eventually got approved to move forward by the American Board of Medical Specialty in June of 2022. And once it got approved, we reached consensus on how this focus practice designation would be administered, because it is a joint effort between our two boards, from American Board of Surgery and American Board of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery. That is, surgeons that have their primary certification from the ABS or the American Board of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery would be able to get this focus practice designation. So in doing so, because it was being shared between our groups, we are going to have co-administrative boards between the groups. We agreed what the name of the focus practice designation should be. That we agreed the assessment to obtain this would be a written exam. And the eligibility requirements required a practice component to be eligible. So you had to be in practice a little bit of time, hence why it's a focus practice designation, and the requirement to include some complex cases, hence the name complex thyroid and parathyroid surgery. So there are two basic ways you can achieve the focus practice designation. And I'll walk through the first pathway, the practice pathway. And obviously, as I said before, you have to have your primary certification from one of the two boards in good standing. There's no fellowship training requirement for the practice pathway. And what you need to document are 120 index thyroid and parathyroid cases. And down at the bottom here, you can see what those cases are, the core cases. So 120 core cases as listed below within a 3-year consecutive period to approximate to submitting your application for a focus practice designation. So on average, you would have done about 40 cases per year over those 3 years. You have to document that you've been participating in multidisciplinary care. An example would be a tumor board that you've been participating in, or a conference with your endocrinologists. And then you have, once you apply, you have 3 years to complete the whole process, meaning taking the exam and stuff like that. And I know the 120 index cases, of those cases, 24 of the 120 had to be complex. And you can see the definition of a complex cases are shown down here: substernal goiter, reoperative thyroid parathyroid surgery, etc. So that is the practice pathway. So the training pathway is the other alternative. And again, the training pathway requires primary certification in good standing. But the training pathway, if you complete an accredited fellowship by the AES or the AHNS, you then can go through this pathway where you need 80 index cases within 2 consecutive years, average of 40 per year. And the document, you need to document multidisciplinary care, and you need to then apply for this within 5 years of completing your fellowship. So
Sometimes you can just put your
to summarize, so for a fellow coming out, they'll be in practice for 2 years after fellowship, and they can apply if they've achieved these 80 index cases within the 2-year period, 16 of them complex based on the same definition. I'm just going to stop here to see if there's any questions on this particular slide. And Peter and I would be glad to answer them. Just raise your hand, just so we don't have just sort of a whole frenzy of people talking at the same time. All right, Amanda.
Thanks for going over all this. To some degree, we are at the mercy of our coders, especially those of us that are old enough to fall into the practice pathway column. And so I guess my question is, how strict will the reporting be, especially with respect to complex cases? Because now my practice, we're in a mechanism where we don't have the opportunity to audit all of our coding. And so sometimes they miss things like, 60270 for a substernal goiter, or they miss the reoperative parathyroidectomy or whatever. But and when I look
Totally
at
right.
what I've done,
Cooper
I
Butler,
know
Cooper.
that those are that way.
Yeah, so for instance, if you keep, like if you're saying, if you have documentation, Amanda, that this was a redo, but the coders have coded it wrong, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, so this will be self-reported. Similar like when you put your cases in for the case list, for your primary board certification, they were primarily reported by you.
That's been a long time. I don't even remember doing that.
Okay. But it's not like we were going to go to your institution and audit your billing to make sure. But good question, Amanda.
There's another question on the chat from
Oh, okay.
Connolly.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Besides tumor board, what other participation can fill the multidisciplinary care aspect?
Well, I think that just demonstration, a statement saying how you participate in multidisciplinary care, endocrine conference, you would be another example. I don't know, Peter, do you have other examples you can think of?
No, I think I think it really is essentially that, you've documented multidisciplinary care, and I think that I mean, the idea is to not make it incredibly onerous, but to encourage the concept of multidisciplinary care, much like a tumor board. So I think everyone acknowledges that there are alternatives to tumor boards that would qualify for multidisciplinary care, but the idea is to not make it overly onerous.
Thanks. And then, so there's a question about when do we expect the application process to begin? So you'll see I've got some timeline in there. So I'll answer that question in subsequent slides. And if you trained in the fellowship more than 5 years ago, yes, you do have to go the practice pathway. Is there a reason we did a focused practice designation rather than a subspecialty? I think that's to get a subspecialty, you have to do an ACGME accredited fellowship. We do not have an ACGME accredited fellowship, so we wouldn't be eligible for a subspecialty.
And I might just add, Herb, I think that, you know, for many people, that seems like that would be a better thing. But from a reality point of view, that would never actually be an achievable goal. So I think that if you look at this from the lens of what is beneficial for patients, to identify surgeons who actually have expertise and experience in this area, this was an achievable goal, and that's why we decided to pursue this goal.
So if I did my, fellowship many years back, and now I want to go the practice route, I could just, as soon as the application opens, I could just apply because I've got 3 years already of doing more than 40 cases per year. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Are you on a video chat?
Okay, I think
Okay.
we got all the questions in the chat box now. Thank you for catching it, Carmen, and continue if you have questions as we go on, you can put in and we'll try to catch them. Okay. So that's to get that's to get your focus practice designation. And so what is, once you get it, it's going to be good for 5 years. And then you're going to have to renew it. And this is consistent with the standards for focus practice designations that have been developed by the American Board of Medical Specialties. So to get your renewal, and after 5 years, you have to maintain your primary certification. There's going to be, you have to obtain a passing score on an article-based knowledge assessment. So those of you who have done the recertification for general surgery know that those are article-based assessments, open book. So that's sort of one way that you can do a renewal of your certification. This focus practice nation will probably be a little less than that, but be based on some article or articles that you get, and it'll be an open book where you answer questions around them, is how we envision them. And then the other point is you will have to contribute patients to a quality registry. Now, the details of this quality registry have not been completely worked out. Right now, we're working on the requirements for the getting examination done for the focus practice initial designation. But we're going to be doing more, and you'll getting more information about what the options for a quality registry will be. And there will be multiple options, not just one option for this. And that this is going to likely be during your focus practice designation, we will start to come up with a process where you can contribute patients to this quality registry or whichever one you choose. But again, we hope that we're going to be able to implement the process or describe it within the first 3 years of your focus practice designation. Yes, I'll get to the exam here in a second. And so patients would be to identify
Yeah, when
on the American Board of Surgery site that you have a focus practice designation in this, along with your primary certification. So after the approval to move forward and the establishment of what it would be, we created a steering committee with the representatives from the head neck, Onondaga Head Neck Board and American Board of Surgery, and those people are listed here. Peter and I are honored to serve as the co-chairs for on the ABS side. And you can see our president serves as one of the members of the steering committee right now. And then we had a call out. There was a open call for nominations for from both the specialties for people to serve on the exam committee to write the exam for the focus practice designation. And after after the call and people applied, these individuals were selected to serve on the exam committee. 10 people from the American Board of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery and 10 people from the American Board of Surgery. And the choices were done based to mix some senior people with some more junior people. We wanted them to be distributed geographically throughout the country. And we wanted some people also that weren't necessarily in academic practice, but were in community practice as well. And those were the rules utilized for both groups to determine their 10 individuals. And so those 10 so the 10 on each side are listed here. And I see many of them on the call today. So what we did, we brought together the writing group. And then we put together what's called a blueprint for the exam. And that blueprint is right now open for public comment. That if you go to the American Board of Surgery site, you can comment on what you think about the exam blueprint. And what the blueprint is the blueprint lists all the topics that will be covered on this exam, the weighting of what, how often this question will be asked on the exam. And so we put a lot of work in developing it. And so we're excited to get comments. And so there's an open period for both diplomats from the ABS and the American Board of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery to also comment on the blueprint. And then obviously we will take all those comments into consideration as we start to draft the exam. Oh, thank you, Barb. They'll send an email blast out so you can get a link to that comment to make your comments. And the rollout is that we will, once the open comment period closes, we get the comments and we finalize the blueprint, we will start writing the exam. And our goal is to make this available in 2025. So within the next year, we'll write the exam, and then you'll see a call out for the application process. Peter, anything to add? This is the last slide.
No, that was really helpful, Herb. One question that someone raised was whether there's a plan to do a similar thing for adrenal conditions, and I would say right now there is not a plan, but I think we're gonna see how this goes. As you can imagine, if there were an attempt to do such a thing for adrenal tumors, that would involve not only significant interaction with the American Board of Surgery, but also the American Board of Urology. And so these are really complex negotiations. And so I would say, I think we're gonna stick with this and see how it goes. And I think, it would be a question for the American Board of Surgery and the AAES for the future.
Thanks, Peter. There's a question. Do you take the exam before you have to number? So you have to have the numbers to take the exam. It's an application process where the exam comes after the application. Stop the share. Brian, Nussbaum, I see you're on the call. Brian, did I forget anything important?
Hey, Herb. No, you explained everything great. I don't think I wouldn't have anything to add.
Thank you. So Brian is the director of the American Board of Oncology and Head and Neck Surgery. And thanks, Brian, for attending. Okay. Let's see. Are you able to submit an application on a rolling basis? So Adriana, can I ask you to be more specific with your question? If you can, by voice.
Yeah, I was just mostly wondering, so if I finish out the 2 years post-fellowship, which would be around the 2025 mark, then if I have my 80 cases, I would be able to apply that summer. But if I, for example, don't have it until the fall, would it still be possible to do it in the fall or the following spring? Just kind of whenever I actually complete those requirements, or is it just a 1 year, a one-time application yearly to be able to sit for the exam?
Yeah, that's that is a good question. I don't think it's going to be a rolling exam, similar to when we administer exams. With the ABS exam, they're admitted at they are administered at certain times of the year. So I'd imagine this would be administered on an annual basis for now, but it would largely depend on demand too. I guess if there was a large demand that we had to do it over multiple times, we would do it. But I don't know, Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's true. And, in fact, I think there are some excellent questions about sort of details, the cost, how exactly one is going to document things like, multidisciplinary care. Some of those details I don't know the answer to, and I'm not sure that Herb or anyone on the board can exactly answer some of those questions. But I think that, the goal is to try to create this so that if you feel that this is a significant portion of your practice and you want to have some documentation of that available for your patients, you can do it. It certainly is not something that everybody needs to do if they don't feel it's important for them or, for their career. And so, I do think that you want to think about it mostly in the context of how might it be of value for patients to identify experienced and high volume surgeons.
So there's a question about tumor board, and it's not being in a tumor board is not a requirement. It's the demonstration that you participate in multidisciplinary care. So our tumor board would be an example of multidisciplinary care. But other examples would be like attending you have a weekly conference, or you have interactions, you do a joint clinic with endocrinologist, something to show that you're practicing not in a vacuum, but with other subspecialties.
There's a question about if one is on the exam writing committee, are you eligible to take the exam? Actually, I think not only are you eligible, but I believe you're expected to take the exam.
That's absolutely right. What would be the damages to take the exam, and where? So, There'll obviously be a cost to the focus practice designation. And I don't know what, I would think it would be, there is currently a focus practice designation in metabolic and bariatric surgery. You could see what the cost of that. I don't know what the exact cost would be. The exam would be an online exam, similar to how the exams for the board are administered now.
Michael Demure has a question about the role of research in academic pursuits. And, you know, again, because this is really focused on patients being able to identify surgeons that have high volume and experience, there really isn't any aspect for research or publications in order to pursue this focus practice designation.
Yeah, and there's a question about, you know, do we want non-AES general surgeons and to participate? And that would be if they have an interest in thyroid, complex thyroid and parathyroid surgery, and they have chosen to focus their practice where they're doing the volume. Definitely, yes, we want them to participate. Because the whole goal of this is for patients not only to identify surgeons who are doing high volume, but it's also to build a community of surgeons who want to continually be most up to date on the knowledge about practice and is to raise the whole standard of practice in thyroid, parathyroid surgery for all surgeons who do it. And that's why it's so great that we're doing this in collaboration with the American Board of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery, because we all want to raise the level of thyroid and parathyroid surgery to make sure patients are getting, you know, the best they get.
I agree completely with you, Herb. There's a question about, you know, whether you're going to put some initials after your name, like FACS. There is, you know, much like you, for most certificates, that is not part of it. That is not the plan for the focus practice designation.
Is it going to be marketed? I mean, we're gonna, just like the metabolic surgery has been done, and I think potentially patients will find this. I don't think we're gonna go on a media blitz to tell patients that we've done this.
There's a question about whether having the FPD might be helpful if endocrine surgery becomes an ABS certified subspecialty. You know, I think that these are going to be unrelated things. And if you think about it, you know, an ACGME approved subspecialty like complex general surgical oncology, that requires one to do an ACGME approved fellowship and take oral and written examinations. And so for anybody who's actually finished a fellowship, I don't think it's likely that it's going to be the case ever, unless you plan on going back to do a fellowship, that you'd be able to, in some future state, get a board certification in endocrine surgery. Because again, thinking back historically, complex general surgical oncology, the plan was that there was no retroactive certification. It was only for people who were finishing the fellowship at the time after it was ACGME approved.
No, and I think that's a very important point. So even if this happened, none of us here would be eligible for it. There's a question about questions being part of the recertification. And I think one of the nice potential outcomes could be is we have all these questions written for the the focus practice designation. And if we have a lot of people who pursue the focus practice designation, I could see in the future that in addition to when you take your research, there's a breakout for abdominal and breast and if there's enough interest, there could be a separate sub for endocrine. So it could end up that we as endocrine surgeons could choose to do part of our recertification with questions from endocrine. That's certainly something that I would like to push. But in order to do that, we have to have questions. And obviously us writing this exam will generate a lot of questions that the board can use for examinations. Carmen, why don't you take the question? Will there be discussion about the focus practice designation in Dallas? Or Barb, is there going to be a discussion of that in Dallas?
There can be at the educational panel session. But there's no
planned session, right?
There's no particular special session, but it will be brought up at that session.
And then we wanted to just get you the most up-to-date information prior to the meeting too. So in addition to getting your feedback as we put together the exam, is that, Peter and I will obviously be at the meeting along with everyone who's in the exam writing group and in the steering committee, and can answer more questions. Barb, did you have anything to add?
No, I was just going to echo what Carmen said, is that there is no scheduled time, although the business meeting will be run a little bit differently, and there's an opportunity for video update and then discussion if necessary during the question and answer period and things that we need to vote on at the business meeting.
Brian, did you have something to add?
Yeah, thanks, Herb. Listening to the questions, maybe two things to add. One is that in terms of the public, when our working group put together the application for ABMS, that application also included engaging with both FICA and the Hypoparathyroidism Association. Both of those organizations wrote letters of support for the FPD moving forward to ABMS as part of that application and approval process. So certainly those patient advocacy groups are aware of this. And when Dr. Beiske and I were having conversations with the leadership of those organizations as the application was coming together, the leadership of those patient advocacy groups were very interested in this and enthusiastic about this moving forward. The other thing I wanted to mention related to the question about initials next to your name, like FACS. At least for our board, I would not foresee something like that. But for the American Board of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery, for our diplomates with sub-certifications in neurotology, complex pediatric otolaryngology, and sleep medicine, we do have digital badges that it's a logo of the board modified that shows that they have special qualification in sleep medicine, neurotology, or complex pediatric otolaryngology. And our diplomates that have sub-certifications in those areas, it's actually, if they go to their portal, they could download the digital badge off of the portal to use on their websites or on their email signature stamp or on stationery and other things like that. So, I think that there's an opportunity if the American Board of Surgery would like to create a digital badge, that both of our boards could do that together for our diplomates that move forward with the focus practice designation.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Okay. We're getting close to the top of the hour, so I want to be cognizant of time. I think I've taken care of all the questions in the chat box. Peter, do you see any? I think we've gotten all of them.
No, I think that we did get them. And as I did put in the chat, I think that this has been a multi-year process. We're nearing the end of it, and therefore, understandably, there are more specific and individual questions. insofar as I am able to answer them, I'm happy to do so. So if you think of something after the fact and you want to reach out to me, feel free. And similarly, you know, at the AAES meeting.
Timeline, we hope to have an exam, an application process ready by next year, 2025. Okay, Carmen, Barb, any last words before we let people get to their dinner and everything?
I was just saying in the chat that I encourage even, you know, the new graduates. I think the majority of us keep track of our cases in one way or another, but we do have the surgeon registry at the ACS, this SESQUIP, your own databases that will make it easy just to look at your outcomes too as you go. I think most of us are doing that. I'm just putting a plug for that.
And I'll shamelessly plug the AAES auction while we're on here with AAES members. We are still collecting anyone who wants to donate items for the auction for the upcoming great meeting in Dallas. Carmen and I donated a ski week that we hope you all bet on so you can come skiing with us. But any items that you want to donate, please, you know, send me an email or Jess McMullen. We're glad to take them. And there's Jess. We're really excited about the event, and we're really excited to see all of you at the meeting. And as I said, Peter and I will be there. Happy to discuss anything that you all want to at the time. All right, well, great to see you all. Have a great evening, and we'll see you in Dallas.
Bye.
See you in Dallas.